As the Taliban tightens its grip on Afghanistan, many Afghans and Americans are scrambling to leave the country. So let's bring in Charlie D'Agata for more on all of this. Charlie, we just heard the ambassador say that he's not seeing an influx of Afghan refugees yet. What's the latest that you're hearing on the situation from your sources on the ground?
Well, that's a good sign. And from what we've been hearing, Laura, there's been some semblance of order, especially around Kabul. Flights are now leaving. There are U.S. military flights that are leaving from the military side of the airport. There hasn't been this great influx of refugees along the border with Pakistan. That's a good sign. And I think it's because the Taliban is on a go slow plan right now, trying to make sure that people aren't panicking. They've actually called some of the government ministers back and trying to call some of the security forces back, declaring an amnesty. But I have to paint the picture about the airport itself, because having been there so many times myself, there's a civilian side of the airport and then there's the military side of the airport. And that's where we saw those stunning pictures as you're looking at now. The fact that so many people were actually able to breach that side of it, that is normally a very heavily defended part of the airport. And military flights do not leave from the civilian side, if you know what I mean. So there's the civilian side where regular commercial aircraft fly in and out of, and then there's the military side. Yes, they share a runway, but they don't share an access point. So what's happened there was just a complete collapse of both Afghan security forces, who should have been providing security around the perimeter of the airport, and then Turkish forces who were there on behalf of NATO, ostensibly to protect it from the Taliban or any other insurgency. So both of those things collapsed, and that's where you saw such chaos there. But the chaos has now been tamped down a bit. They have at least the military side of the airport is under control, and military flights have started again. When I say military flights, they're obviously operated by the military, but there are primarily American citizens on those flights who've started moving out.
Yeah, earlier we were speaking to Roxana Saberi, who's trying to get a flight out, and she mentioned that she was on the military side. So clearly they're using the military side to get some civilians out. Yesterday, Charlie, President Biden, we know, spoke, and he said that American troops shouldn't be fighting in a war that Afghans aren't willing to fight themselves. Why didn't Afghan forces, quote, step up, as the president said?
Well, I listened to that speech. In fact, I reported on the speech just after that in a special report. And what struck me about that was, first of all, yes, I don't think many people would argue with the fact that Afghan forces did not stand and fight, whether they had the resolve to, lost faith in the leadership, which is true, lost faith in risking their own lives for a government that they didn't believe in. But they never fought on any front. All of those provincial capitals fell like dominoes. So it's pretty self-apparent that Afghan forces didn't stand and fight. However, I have to make clear that when people talk about the Americans in coalition have been training Afghan forces for 20 years. They started from scratch, so there wasn't many of Afghan forces to speak of any sort of description back in 2001. So let's erase the first 10 years. They have been trained up. They've been equipped. That's important. They've been equipped. They've been funded. It's cost a lot of money. And I've been there on these training missions. I've been there on these embeds, and they are a fully capable fighting force. Not as good as the commandos, who are a little bit older, a little bit more battle-hardened, a little bit better trained, a little bit better at using the equipment. Because some of the equipment, you can only equip a military with equipment that they can use. But what happened in this particular event, and I know because I was there. So I was there on sort of mid-April, because the initial pullout was supposed to be, the initial deadline was supposed to be May 1st, and that was under the Doha agreement that was negotiated with the Trump administration. So I wanted to be there to see if the Taliban was just going to go crazy once U.S. forces, went past that May 1st deadline. As soon as President Biden said, yes, we can't get out by May 1st, but we are going to get out by September 11th. August 31st, with the September 11th in mind, so many dates. As soon as the Taliban realized that, and they knew there was going to be a reduction in the rules of engagement, i.e. they wouldn't be slammed by U.S. airstrikes, they just went on the attack. And initially they started taking over the countryside, and they circled these provincial capitals. And the feeling then was, and in fact, the last time I was there, was that they were going to surround the provincial capitals, but they weren't going to pull the trigger. They weren't going to launch this all-out assault on the provincial capitals because, frankly, the U.S. military was still in the neighborhood. They could still direct these airstrikes. They still had eyes and ears on the ground with their Afghan colleagues. But then the Taliban just went on a rampage, and one after another, 10 provincial capitals fell over the course of 48, 72 hours. And then the Afghan military was scrambling. So, yes, we can look back and say, well, they should have been capable of fighting the Taliban because we've been training them for 20 years. We've given them all the equipment, and they outnumbered the Taliban, absolutely. But in real terms, having spoken to the commanders, they were kind of living in denial. They were hoping that President Biden might somehow go back on President Trump's agreement to remove all U.S. troops. So when it really comes down to it, we're not talking about 20 years ago. We're not even talking about 2 years ago. We're talking about a year ago, maybe 6 months, maybe April. So then once you take away the U.S. airstrikes, once you take away close air support, that's important, you know, helicopters coming in. Once you take away medevac, once you take away supplies that the Afghans have always been struggling with, there was just no way that they would be able to stand and fight unless they were doing it out of just pure courage and risking their own lives. And as I already mentioned, would they feel that they wanted to face a determined enemy? Regarding
that, I mean, they had years and years of training, best training in the world, if we're calling the U.S. military the best military on the globe. And they had $1 trillion worth of funding for various programs. Now that the Taliban has taken over, does this mean, I have two questions. What's happening to all of these supplies and the trucks and the ammunition and the guns? Is that all in the Taliban's hands now? And also, what's happening to the Afghan fighters trained so well by the U.S. military? Are they now going to be converted into Taliban fighters?
Well, first of all, in terms of the equipment, as the Taliban overran these cities, one of the first things they did was to take all of the weapons and the equipment. So they're all, I mean, you know, Afghanistan, whether we like it or not, is under new management. So all of those Humvees, all of those APCs that you and I both paid for, all American taxpayers paid for, are now in the hands of the Taliban. In terms of the forces that are there, I think it was slightly inflated, and I do have to paint a little bit of a picture. When we talk about 350,000, which is the number that's been floating around, they call them Afghan security forces. There's a big breakdown of that because you have the Army, you have commandos, you have the NDS, which is the intelligence agency, you have the police, but they're not police as you and I might know them. They're heavily armed. Essentially, they're militancy in themselves. And those are the different categories. Now, the Taliban is asking some of them to come back, certainly in terms of the police. Anybody who'd been working with the government before, they need them back, and there's a good reason for that. They don't have anywhere near the manpower to run the country or run security. But keep in mind that the security there was in place to stop the Taliban. So they need an element of security to impose law and order, and they're inviting, as they've always said, we're fighting on behalf of Afghanistan, and they're inviting certain levels. I wouldn't necessarily say the Army and the NDS, the intelligence agencies, because they will continue to be fierce enemies, and they've gone into hiding or fled the country or wherever they've gone. But in terms of running the day-to-day, running the checkpoints, running the airport, running security in any normal situation, they're trying to invoke an amnesty because they know that they're going to have to get these men and women back into the frame in order to help them run the country. But yes, all of that equipment is now in Taliban hands.
Well, let's hope for a peaceful situation and some stability. But as we know, the Taliban, an extremist group, ruled with brutal force for many years. So I think a lot of people are skeptical and a bit nervous. Charlie, thank you so much for your analysis.
Thank you.